walked in on someone taking a nude photograph of themselves in the workplace, would that be grounds for dismissal?
If they're just taking a photo of, an abnormal mole for a medical professional.
Oh, I doubt it. They're filthy with freckles and they don't do a thing about it.
What's the policy on physical violence? Is it okay for a boss to slap an employee across the face at work?
Absolutely not.
And what is the corporate policy on extortion?
Is this the kind of workplace where insider trading is considered bad? I just want to clarify because I worked with someone who said I was naive to have a problem with it.
And what if someone tells you their pronouns when you did not ask and you do not care?
Well, what if someone tells you how to dress for your body shape when you did not ask and you do not care?
Can I fire someone for free bleeding in the workplace?
Thank you for tuning in to USG University, a series of conversations about the artistry that goes into bringing us incredible stories. This series is developed in partnership with Roybal Film and TV Magnet. Roybal provides career and college-ready students with the tools and experience they need to launch successful below-the-line careers. I'm Ben Travers from IndieWire. Joining me today from Hacks are panelists Jen Statsky, co-creator, co-showrunner, executive producer, and writer; Lucia Aniello, co-creator, co-showrunner, executive producer, director, and writer; Paul W. Downs, the co-creator, co-showrunner, executive producer, director, writer, and the actor playing Jimmy; Adam Bricker, our series cinematographer; and Rob Tokars, the production designer. Thank you so much for being here today, everybody. We're going to get started with a clip from season 4, episode 9, and then we'll dig into how these fine folks created one of TV's best comedies.
What? Why are you laughing?
Fuck!
No, hey, come on, stay with us. Stay with us here. We're at commercial. Okay, I'm getting the Coke. I'm just gonna get the Coke. I'm gonna get the Coke.
Oh, wake up. Fuck, that's a lot of Coke. Hurry.
Okay.
More, we don't know our tolerance right now. Come on, big lines, pick that line. Gator tails.
What is a gator tail?
Go to one party, Jimmy.
Shut up.
You shut up, you're freaking me out.
Okay. No.
Oh, we're naked.
Okay, we're not decent, thank you.
Okay, just give me a 2-minute warning.
Thank you, too. 2 minutes.
Hurry.
We have 2 minutes. Great. Okay, here you go. Here's your Coke. Come on,
wake
you can do a
up,
line.
princess.
Come on, breakfast is served. Come on, please. Please.
Bring the cocaine to the
No.
nose.
Okay, this is so fucked up. Oh my God.
Hurry, Jimmy, God.
Okay, shut up. Okay, I can't look at this.
Okay, I'm gonna have to tickle her.
What are you talking about?
I have to make her sniff.
Can't tickle an unconscious woman. Okay, fine, do it.
Tickle.
You need to move it, Jimmy.
What? What is she saying?
She wants you to boof it. She wants you to put it up her butt.
I am not gonna boof it.
You're gonna boof it.
I'm not gonna boof it.
Fine, I'll boof it.
No, only Jimmy.
Nobody's boofing anybody. God. Look, just snort this.
I like it like that.
Okay, obviously there's a lot to discuss within that wonderful, beautiful clip. But the first thing I wanted to ask was, Paul, before this clip, when you're setting up the scene, when everybody first gets into the dressing room, there's a brief kind of skirmish when Dance Mom first brings up the fact that she wants some cocaine. And you get very, like, you're yanking the bag away from her, and you get very, very close to biting her right before she lets go. And I just had to ask that among all these takes, when you're doing all this stuff, at any point, please be honest, did you actually bite Emmy-winner Julianne Nicholson?
I cannot recall. No, that's like a legal answer. No, I never actually made tooth to Emmy winner contact. I did not bite.
That's good.
And
I think that's the only take where you kind of pretended to, actually.
that was the closest it ever came. Yeah.
But it did seem like genuine fear on
yeah.
her part, but she's an Emmy winner, so I can't, it could be just great acting.
Well, she would have been fine with it. That's the thing about her, is she's so game. If Paul bit her hand, she would have gone with it. She would not have stopped the scene.
Well, she was really holding on to that bag. She's
Yeah.
very committed. And also, I will say, she did get there were some nicks, some cuts, some injuries, because that was very physical. She, like, threw herself into a bar cart. There was blood.
I'd say that I think that, like, for example, she's on all four, we reveal she's on all fours. That's like written to the script. they wrestle over the bag. And she runs into the bar cart. Like all those beats are definitely there. In terms of like they're sitting down and this is where they stand up. I think that's the kind of thing that we work out when they're standing up, when they sit down for the most part. And that we kind of, we don't really do a lot of rehearsals. Some might say none. But we do in terms of that kind of a thing. We'll do like 1 or 2 rehearsals to just make sure that for the lighting, of course, and all that stuff. But for the most part, most of it is there, but a lot of it we do figure out in one quick brief rehearsal so we can get it on camera.
I kind of wonder if this was one of the rare scenes. Like I have a recollection of rehearsing this the day before. And maybe it was like before. One of the rare scenes in 4 seasons where we were able to do that. And I think it was mostly to get the geography right of where that bar cart was going to be and making sure that the space itself was working for the structure of the scene.
Another fun fact, that's also a changed around location that we also shot the Lorenza Izzo Ruby scene. And also, I want to say Mayor Joe, was that also in that room?
Yeah. We used the same room, and Jen Lucart and her team changed all the furnishing around, but we kept the same finishes in the room, so that we kind of had that consistency of backstage at late night, and it was kind of a very vibey room. I really love the wallpaper we found.
Well, actually, Rob, on that note, I wanted to ask, this is probably too in the weeds or whatever, but I noticed again, like when we first go into that room, you see in the very back corner the bucket that'll be used for like to splash her head into in the next scene. Like it's filled with ice and water bottles and all that. And then when you do look into that corner, you see kind of just the water bottles, like some of them are empty and they're just laying in the background like that. Is that something that, again, like, is that in the script and you bring it in and have it set up? Or is that something where it's like you kind of put yourself into this room and you're like, what can we use to start the next segment? Like, how do we use what's here to make sure that it's all kind of rooted in their reality?
Yeah, well, we have a lot of discussions on what the action needed to be because we did have a chance to rehearse. We did take a look at the set. So we had options on what the ice bucket would actually be and what would look best cinematically. And then we kind of back it up and have it make sense to the room so that we see that it's indicated there. It all has to tie together to be realistic. So it feels like it's not something that suddenly appears on a coffee table. It was holding the water bottles at one point and they used it for something else.
The physical comedy, it's not just like kind of the her being on all fours and some of the crazier movements and all that. It's the fact that like you stand and you sit and you move, like you run to the door and you run back from the door. Again, like when you're writing the script and you're setting it up, is that something that you've learned over the years so you know to do that? And then like, what are the processes that you guys go through now that you've worked together for so long to be like, yeah, this is how it's going to work. This is how we can really, keep the pace where we want to keep it, amp it up as we need to amp it up. What are those conversations like between you guys?
I mean, we definitely scripted a lot of the physical comedy because it was such a frantic scene. They were going to be essentially dragging an unconscious woman into her dressing room and trying to revive her, and with people coming in and out, and Paige is saying it's time for the show. There was a lot of opportunity for us to mine moments for physical comedy, but that was one of the reasons why this was a scene where we did want to run through before we actually committed to anything, because there were so many moving pieces and so many elements, and it allowed all of us to figure out, because Megan Stalter and Julianne Nicholson and myself all had a lot of fun doing it, and I think we're all people that are open to improvisation and ad-libbing, but that was one that we kind of had to choreograph pretty specifically because there are so many props, there's so much matching continuity wise, that you have to take the bag out kind of at the same time. And then there's if you do multiple takes, there is the clearing of the cocaine, which is a very common phrase in film and theater.
Clear the cocaine.
Clear the cocaine. So there were like a lot of resets that we had to be aware of. She's getting wet in this ice bucket. There were just like so many elements that the rehearsal for this one was really helpful, even though I think all of the actors in that scene were very happy following the fun and finding things and discovering things, like as you noted, the near bite, that was something that just happened.
Right, like it's a delicate dance of like being very like direct in the script, and then also when we rehearse so that we can match continuity and stuff. But like Paul's saying, and credit to him, like he and Meg and obviously and Julian are so present and such like incredible comedians that in the moment you also want to give space for them to make choices. Like when Paul, one of the funniest moments in the scene to me is when Paul goes over the door and like throws the purse over his shoulder, and like that was not in the script, that was just something like Paul found in the moment. So it's always a tricky, or maybe Lucia, you told him, I don't know what it was, but it was found on the day in the moment. And so it's like you want to be prescriptive enough that it will work and we'll be able to shoot it efficiently on the day, but also give room for the actors to play, because when you have such gifted actors, you want to give them that leeway.
But then on our end, we have to make sure that the bar cart is something safe for her to bump into multiple times. So we had to replace all of the glassware with something that was not going to break apart. I think we replaced the glass of the bar cart itself with tempered glass, so if it were to crack, it would be safe. So we take all of these elements and just make sure that nobody's going to get hurt with them to help give them the flexibility to do as much as they did.
It's such a quick, like kind of rapid combination of things that are like easy to pick apart on like a kind of, beat by beat basis. But I guess from a big picture, Adam, when you come in to shoot this, like you've got your script, you are in the room, you're working out the blocking, all of those things. What's kind of the leeway that you have to either, make observations where it's like, well, hey, if we shoot it like this, we could get a joke out of this, or if we shoot it like this, it would give you room to like move over here and create this things. Like, what are the kind of conversations that you're able to have on a TV schedule when you're making things very quickly and you normally don't have a lot of time?
Well, I think what I love about this scene from a camera perspective is just how reactive the camera is. And I think we have incredible camera operators on the show that are really in this scene, like living in the moment. And there's a great energy to the scene. And I think that they strike the right tonal balance of not trying to introduce that energy with the camera, but sort of reacting to the performances in a way that keeps it really grounded and very real. And then we had the luxury of rehearsing it the night before. And so we kind of had a sense of what the geography might be. And then from a lighting perspective, just trying to make it naturalistic, but also kind of feel a little scary, like something bad might happen in here. And which is tough, and it's a tight space, and fortunately Rob brought that wonderful wallpaper, so we were able to keep the walls dark and keep the light on the actors. But yeah, you're sort of just lighting the environment and then just having wonderful camera operators interact with this cast and get to capture that energy.
So I was actually talking to you about this before we started the official panel, but that shot that you guys mentioned where she's suddenly on all fours, like when you last saw her, she looked like she was comatose. Like it looked like she wasn't able to do anything. And then it becomes a joke when you're able to cut back and see, like, all of a sudden, not only is she saying something insane, but she's also very ready to do something insane. And you said that was written into the script. So I guess how often, like, is that something that's come with time where you kind of, the three of you work together, you think that way because you all have kind of directed, you all have been working together for so long, and you're able to do that? And then how often are you able to find that, like, on the set where you're like, we can add jokes visually, we can bring stuff to this, like, that we didn't think about when we were, writing it out?
Always written kind of, to be honest, visually. I think, like, if you look at the pilot of this show, like, it's a wonder that, like, is written to explain everything because of the shot. Like, it, like, this is where she's a comedian and stale jokes. You see the world that revolves around her, and then you finally reveal her in her kind of like layer of her dressing room. So, like, that's just an example of like how it's kind of always written visually. And also, we also write to do jokes such as that. But I will say that, I mean, they're definitely, as we go through the process, there sometimes when we're scouting a location, an idea might come because of the location, or sometimes if I'm directing, like, I mean, I didn't really come up with anything when I was shot listing this one, but oftentimes when I shot list, I'll come up with like a reveal joke or some kind of visual thing. Or also oftentimes, yeah, if we get to rehearse or while we're shooting or while we're, and sometimes even like in the edit, you can actually find a moment that is revealed that you didn't necessarily think. So it really is from every part of the process. We're constantly trying to make it better and funnier and more emotional and whatever it is. We're just trying to, it's like an interesting balance of always trying to keep the train on the tracks of the production of getting a show done, while still keeping your antennas open as much as possible to how can we make it as good as possible. And if you are only thinking about production and execution, then you're really not letting your spidey senses, I have a 3-year-old, spidey senses tingle when something else is happening. But also if you're only thinking about what else, you're not likely to actually get the shot or the scene or the episode done the way that it needs to get done. So it really is this constant flow of then balance of, I'm making this show and executing it, but also trying to make it as good as possible, which I guess is obvious, but sometimes it's not.
A scene like this is so fun because we really get into the flow of it. Like you kind of are just, we're all making it and it's happening. And like, I don't know, I remember a great energy on set. My favorite thing is the end, actually, Lucia, where you push in on Julianne and then it match cuts to the stage and she's doing that psycho dance. I love that cut. I don't remember if that was something we conceived of in shot list or if that's something you found in the edit or.
No, it was something that was in the shot list, pushes in on her face. Yeah. And the only other thing that I think is interesting potentially is that, so that first shot of her coming up out of the ice bucket, we actually had originally done a steady cam shot of that, but that isn't actually and then we also had the other camera do a more handheld one just next to it, which ended up folding into the coverage. But in the end, I kind of felt like the one that was more handheld kind of matched better because it felt a little bit more chaotic and also went out of focus, which ordinarily you'd say, oh, that one was soft, so it's not use it, but it actually kind of felt more like the way that when you come up out of water, you are out of focus for a minute.
To go outside of this clip a little bit, I have to ask, as I guess just a nerdy person, you shot on the Universal Studio tour. There's a sequence where they're going to look for her before they get to the green room earlier in this episode, where they're driving the golf cart like across all of these different parts of the tour. How did this come about, and how did you decide on which parts of the tour? Like, I'm assuming it's the real tour. I've never been on the real tour, but how did this come about, and how did you decide on what to use?
I mean, early on in the writing, we just were like, it's so funny that she's lost on the lot and that Jimmy and Kayla would have to go searching. And I mean, I've worked on the Universal lot for like almost a decade, and we've shot hacks on the Universal lot for half a decade, or I guess 4 years, but not the first year. So like, we're just very aware of the tour and the trams and what people see. And like, we'll see Transformers taking their helmet off for a smoke break and stuff. Like, so I think we've just been living in that. And then when when we were writing this, we knew that it would be funny to have Jimmy and Kayla going all over the lot and like running into Norman Bates and driving by the Jaws thing. And I think it's like, we feel so lucky to shoot in LA, and the Universal lot is such like an iconic part of LA history and movie and TV history. So it was cool to get to like pay homage to those things in this sequence that Lucia and Adam did such a beautiful job shooting, of like them going all over the lot and getting to highlight different parts of it.
Were there added hurdles in terms of what gets included? Like, there's the scene where you drive by a bunch of the vehicles that are from like you have the Jurassic Park Jeep, and you have like the Flintstone mobile, the Flintstones car. Like, is that something that, again, it looks very natural, like it's supposed to in the show, where it's like they're just driving through the lot, so here they are. But is that something that you had to negotiate and work out and like choose? And how did you do it?
I think all of those are actually staged there. Everything you see is actually sort of a peek behind the curtain at the Universal lot. So it wasn't as if we asked permission to bring them in, but I think partially because those are Universal properties, it was okay to showcase them. I think people are happy to showcase, again, sort of a peek behind the curtain of like where film and television is made, because it's a rare thing to be able to, we get to see it every day, but I think it's fun for the audience to get to see, inside the episode.
And so much of this season is an homage to television, and our love for it. So I think it just makes sense that we would be trying to incorporate those things. And yes, I know War of the Worlds is a movie, but
Well, speaking very much of Hollywood and TV, I'd be remiss not to ask about the late night set and how that came about. And I'd read a couple of interviews with Rob, actually, about kind of some of the design elements that went into it. But I believe that there were actually aspects of the set that were pulled from like Deborah's journey in previous seasons. Like the floor was the same floor that was in the
That's
bus
right.
of her tour bus. Like, how did you even decide on that stuff? Like, how did you decide, like, this is what I want to like build into the set, and then also like this is how I want to, pay homage to the path that she's walked to get here.
Yeah, that was one of the nice things was that at end of season 3, I knew that that set was coming, so I was able to
Okay.
kind of keep it in my head and see what was going to last throughout the hiatus. But we had this great opportunity to create a late night stage, and I wanted to honor that journey and find the pieces that made it feel both LA and Las Vegas. So when I looked a lot at the Griffith Observatory, the Eastern Building downtown for vibe and for finishes. But also the header above her head was a nod to Johnny Carson's set when he moved from New York to Burbank to kind of track that journey. The star drop behind her was from the Palmetto. The chevron floors were from both her mansion and the tour bus that we did in second season. And we couldn't get away without having sequins. And Jen Lucart, again, found this really great material. These tiles that had these sequins on them. So we wanted to incorporate all of that. And we love a footlight, right, Adam? So we wanted to make sure that we had the absolute most integrated footlight that we'd ever made. So there was just a lot of that. And then right behind her head, you see from right to left, it's Las Vegas monuments, and right to LA on the left.
Okay, so Adam, I wanted to ask about shooting the set, and Lucia obviously too, but a lot of the views that we get, like the audience gets for Hacks, are, you've got a little bit of the monitors involved, you've got some of the cameras, you're behind them looking back like out at the audience. It's not the way that the TV audience would be seeing the show, even though you get some of that too. How much did you have to kind of adjust the either your camera setup, the lighting, the stage itself, to get the shots that you wanted to get? And how much did you say like, well, hey, this is how it is on the late night set, and we just have to, shoot it the way it is?
Yeah, I think in terms of shooting, behind the scenes of it, I think like that sort of echoes how we've always sort of treated Deborah's performances. So when she was doing her stand up, we weren't shooting that necessarily from an audience's point of view. We were always sort of giving you a behind the scenes angle on that, and then also getting in much closer than you would to sort of get into her head and her sort of emotional state. Lighting wise, we were we had visited a lot of late night shows, but actually what really stuck with me is that in season 3 we shot on the same stage where they shoot The Price is Right and also Real Time with Bill Maher. And I remember looking at that lighting grid and just seeing so many lights rigged to the ceiling. Like, you really had the sense that many shows had shot here for decades. And Rob and I really wanted to bring that to Deborah's set as well. She was inheriting this show, and they wouldn't necessarily take the lights down. They would utilize what was there and then sort of add to it. And we really wanted to have that sort of chaos up in the sky of a lighting design.
The ceiling was an astonishing choreography. I mean, the amount of pipe and grid that was on chain motors moving up and down in softboxes was incredible.
Yeah, it was we kind of learned this season 3 when Deborah guest hosted, and then we were in the edit cutting that we realized that the more you like live in it and sit in it in the coverage that is actually in a late night show, it gets a little strange because you're like, am I watching Hacks or am I watching an actual late night show? And so I think that was super informative, like Lucia is saying, going forward for this season, we knew, oh, it always is about who are the characters speaking to, what is the story we're telling. So you really don't ever live too long in like a standard late night coverage, because it just started feeling a little bit not like our show.
Okay, well, I gotta let you guys go pretty soon, but I want to go around the room and just ask, in terms of season 4, if there was something, especially from a craft perspective, that you were particularly proud of, like just, it could be, just a favorite prop or a favorite shot or a favorite scene or something you built or created, or even just something that you noticed somebody else had done and you were just like, I can't believe that they were able to pull this stuff off. When you think back on season 4, what's going to kind of stand out to you guys in terms of the craft of it, I guess?
The way that we spoke about this briefly earlier, but the War of the Worlds, we really wanted to shoot it at dusk. We really were committed to shooting that at a time of day that we really don't get to shoot at a lot because there's a lot of coverage and it's hard to keep everything out shooting within, say, 40 minutes. So we created like a situation where we had 2 steady cam operators and a dolly. So it was 3 cameras at the same time shooting. And then we did some wides, but I think that, you know, it was just a time where like we really all put our heads together at how can we figure this out and make this work to execute at a time that we don't always get to shoot at. And it looks really great. And I'm really proud of how that came out, and yet still cuts continuity wise quite well.
I think for me, one of the trickiest but proudest moments of this season is we had to shoot a scene where Deborah Vance runs into the ocean in February, which here in LA, you know, if you don't live here, you may not know, is still frigid. You know, it's absolutely frigid. And so we had to shoot that both at a beach, and we had to do some of that water work on stage in a tank, which felt so old Hollywood to have to like put Jean in a tank with green screen. And it was really quite a feat of every single department coming together and figuring out how visually it would look, how visual effects would help it feel like it was seamless. The stunt people that actually went into the ocean, as well as Jean, let's be honest, Jean does run into the ocean. You will see in the footage, her feet go into the water. So you'll see that she didn't shop her store as you wanted to. But anyway, that for me, I think was a pretty epic sequence.
For me, there's a montage at the beginning of 404, which is really epic and wonderful, and Paul directed it and did an amazing job, but it was really hard to achieve. There's so many moving pieces in that montage, and like we were saying about Charlie doing second unit, we did so much stuff with second unit, picking things up, but then in the edit, you know, it was very difficult to find the right song, but the way it comes together, I think, is such like a beautiful love letter to television, and the way television is so collaborative, because you see every part of the late night world come together and how many people it takes to come together to make it happen. And it's not just the writers or Deborah, it's the PAs, it's the crew who's our, you know, real construction crew, so many of them, and like Deborah's wig makers who actually makes her wigs. Like, we highlight in that montage all of the people and craftspeople that it takes to make a television show, which is an enormous number of people, and television is so collaborative, and it's my favorite thing about it at the end of the day. So to get to capture that and put it on TV and show people all of the people that it takes to make a show was really, really satisfying.
And then also from that same episode, the oneer that takes Deborah from her dressing room onto the late night stage for her first performance, is one of my favorite moments in the season. I love that it's echoing back to the work that we've done on seasons past and sort of like tracking this character's journey. It's so funny, and then also has like wonderfully emotional, like poignant moments towards the end of the shot. And then just shooting a oneer is so fun to do as a crew. Like, if you get it wrong, you've got to go back to one. So it's sort of all hands on deck, and everyone's working together at the top of their game. I love shooting that.
For me, it's a little bit more of the sausage making. And what we did is we started with Ava's office and having to tie that into our shot. We're coming out of the writer's room and cutting into her office, and then turning that into Rob's office, and then turning that into a conference room, and then turning that space into the writer's bullpen, and then solving the problem of not being able to move anywhere to do the attorney's office, and tear the entire thing apart and make it a completely different space. So those 5 sets are the same footprint, and it stayed there all season long. And then having it make sense with all the actual production offices we were in our offices and Kathleen's office, and just having all those spaces work together.
You guys picked such great parts of the season. It's so clear like how much you love TV and how much your skill comes through in this season. So thank you so much for making the time with us today. Thank you everyone for joining us. Hacks is currently streaming on Max. Do not miss it. And thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.